Hello everyone, thank you for joining me today to allow me to show you what I've been working on the last 2 years for my thesis presentation. It's called Chromatically. I'm going to take about 15 minutes or so to kind of share with you what I've been working on, and then we'll have a time for questions and answers a little bit after that, and then I'll let you guys play around with the actual art installation itself. It is a powerful tool for creatives to kind of find inspiration regarding color. There's a good quote by Oscar Wilde: "Mere color, unspoiled by meaning and unallied with definite form, can speak to the soul in 1,000 different ways." This quote kind of gets to the essence of how color is important in our lives and how it does drive the decisions that we make on a daily basis, whether it be from a biological standpoint or whether it be from a branding or commercial standpoint. All right, so that quote kind of sums up kind of the wealth and the calm and the fear and all kinds of things that color can emotionally create inside of us as human beings. But until I get to that and the innate visual cues that color presents to each one of us, let me talk a little bit about myself, just very briefly. I won't bore you too long. My passion to be a better version of myself today than what I was yesterday spills over into all the work that I do and all that I try to create. And it is kind of my plan of reinvention with some intention. Part of the whole reason why I decided to get my master's degree. From the conservative Midwest, which is where I'm from, I am always uncomfortable unless I'm searching for new ways of kind of exploring ideas and being creative. I'm a designer and a mentor. In the digital world, I love making things that are not tangible a little bit more tangible and creating things within the digital world that give us as human beings a sense of tangibility and a tactile sense, and then simulating that in real life interactions, and that's kind of what my thesis is really focused on. I'm by nature a visioner, one who envisions grand ideas. To sum it up at the end of the day, I'm altruistic and I love mentoring the creative process throughout. What I am, like I mentioned, spills over into what I make. Here's a couple of things that I've created over my time here at Academy of Art University. This is an app for home aquarists to manage their reef tanks. I have a huge passion for saltwater aquariums. And then I also did this geometric artwork exploring the sacred nature of geometry in visual images. To lay some groundwork, ask yourself, How does color touch us? What's color's significance to each one of us individually as well as a human race? Let's explore a brief example. So think to yourself about the meaning, the emotions, the feelings that come to mind when you see this color. Regardless of the language or the cultural nuances, it is the hue that we all call the color red. Perhaps one of these things came to mind. No matter what you thought of, color crosses cultures and means different things to different cultures. In the Chinese culture, for example, red is the color of happiness and good fortune. Other cultures, it's anger and fear and love as well. But you may just connect to the color red in one of these brand identities with Target or the Red program. And then what about the color green? Green, right? It's just green. But not so fast. There's a huge industry that centers itself around the forecasting and prediction of color. This color has been christened greenery, not just green, and it is Pantone's actual 2017 color of the year, believe it or not, whether you like it or not. And it shows that color, all color, not just green colors, means big money for companies, for human beings, and so on. Colors influence us. Color is ingrained in our very being. Color culturally defines us. Color is inspiring. And in fact, color has a huge impact on all of humanity, not only the commercial sector. It is a scientific fact that brand recognition is increased by 80%. So the recognition of a brand is increased by a full 80% when color is used effectively. Color accounts for half of the decisions that all consumers make when they're making a purchase. That's pretty powerful. Color gets inside us, affects our visceral, innate emotions and sensibilities. So let's explore a little bit about how I kind of took all of that stuff that I've just talked about as far as color and how it innately affects each one of us as a human race and as individuals, and see how I've kind of taken that inspiration and turned it into something tangible. So color is known to have a great impact on human beings in branding, in soliciting an emotional response, and innately getting us to do what we need to do and promoting connections to things that we like. But wait, what color choice do you make? One that looks pretty? As a designer, how is that going to appeal to your target audience? You have to make a decision, and you have to communicate that decision oftentimes with a defined reason and strategy behind that. And as a designer or artist, there's no easy way to kind of tell what the current forecasts are going to be with color unless you kind of follow fashion trends and so on and so forth. And even with the fashion trends, which then transcend into the interior design industry and then into the graphic design industry, all that stuff comes about 6 months after the forecasts are made. And there was no real way to innately, as a designer, go in and see what colors are trending right now, what are designers using right this minute as a tool. And the best way of doing that is pulling those colors from the World Wide Web across all cultures and having a database that allows you designers to use those and then go to their clients and say, here's the data backing up the reasons why I chose these colors for you, without them saying, well, did you just choose this because it's pretty? So this is a solution to that very problem. So just to reiterate, the forecasting of colors is kind of out of designers' hands, unfortunately. It's relegated to some mystical color theorists that lives in some, works for some big corporation that's their business. The current color trends are typically determined by assumptions made from, like I alluded to, fashion runways, and then they trickle down. There are no real quantifiable tools right now for designers, like I alluded to, relative to a target audience. Until now, my solution called Chromatically. It is a comprehensive set of design tools that allows users to see what colors are being used right now on the World Wide Web instead of guessing and taking a look at what's forecast for the other industries and then making assumptions from that. It is colors that are being used instantaneously. This is the user interface as it was envisioned for the mobile platform and a tablet. It's also optimized for desktop as well, so it can be used on any of those three responsively. And then there's an alternative view for the tablet, as you see here. So Chromatically brings awareness to how our curated lives, the stuff that's all around us, how those are influenced by the colors that we see every day, whether it's in a logo design or a brand or a product design, or in a building, in an interior design, how those colors affect us. Chromatically taps into that. It is desktop tools to communicate next trend color predictive modeling as well, for designers to be better able to predict what the next trends in colors are going to be, so that then in turn their clients can use those colors with that predictability. Based on a proprietary collection of algorithms that I built as part of my thesis, I scraped the current color data from over 10,000 websites, the top 100,000 websites, and then whittled those down to just the top 10,000. And you can go in and you can actually, as a curatory tool, you can actually go in and curate shows based on currently, as the settings are, based on country or a basic language structure, and then based on an industry. So you can be inspired by those demographic details. But at the end of the day, Chromatically is an interactive art installation that allows a viewer to experience color and current color trends right now as colors are being used, like I mentioned, around the world on the World Wide Web. But at the end of the day, Chromatic allows a viewer to experience color as it's being used right now. So as part of this exploration, I kind of did some extensive competitive research. So let's just take a look at the competition. and see what's going on out there in the marketplace as far as other tools that do this. There's no tool that does exactly what Chromatically does, because none of the color predictive tools or tools that designers use actually allows the designer to see what's being used right now. It's all predictions that are being used. There are tools out there that allow you to see what tool or what palettes designers think are cool, but it's not a tool that allows you to see that they're using those palettes. So Chromatically would fill in that gap. Competition is formally entrenched, but nothing replicates Chromatically. Like I mentioned, Pantone is the industry standard. They have been for quite some time now, since the 60s. They are the model for graphic designers, the industry standard for predicting color. And then there's also a couple of others. Munsell Color is the grandfather of color prediction. Started out over a century ago as a tool to allow government entities to test soil samples based on the minerals that were in those soils and thus the colors that are in them. And it's kind of transitioned into being another color predictive tool. And then the third and final, which is probably one that you as designers are all aware of, it's called Adobe Color. And they're a newcomer to the game in a relative term in the last 20 years since Adobe started developing software. It's the preeminent choice for graphic designers for software solutions and integration of color into design tools. So now that we know the problem that Chromatically is trying to solve, let's talk a bit more about the Chromatically Toolbox and what that includes. The Chromatically family includes a set of desktop and mobile device options and applications. It also includes the art object that sits on designers' desktops that allows them to get current color trends right to their desktop with a small OLED that allows them to see what colors are populating in the art object itself, as well as the art installation, which you see the prototype for that here, which I've built, that allows individuals to experience colors as they're being used right now directly in a gallery installation that allows them to be submersed in a gallery experience. So targeting the viewer is a key way of gaining important information about how to make Chromatically relevant. I had a primary and secondary audience, and the primary and secondary target audiences focused on color specifiers working within the design industry in print fashion, particularly the primary audience, 24 to 54 years old. The secondary audience are individuals that want to be inspired by color, but they're more art enthusiasts that are just interested in seeing what color is all about. And then I explored task flows. Each viewer was assigned a basic set of simple tasks that would allow me to understand better how a typical user would move through the installations and the user interface itself. And tasks 1 and 2 I've termed active tasks, meaning that the gallery visitor has a mobile device in their hand. The third task is a passive task. It allows a user, even if they don't have a mobile device, to get the full impact of the art installation itself with a passive touch display that's envisioned to be integrated into the art installation itself. So the task 1 is more comprehensive. Task 2, again active, is a simplified viewer experience, testing the reminder functions. So you can actually be reminded when your curation's coming up. If the curation queue is a couple hours long, you can be reminded while you're having coffee or whatever, and you can return to the gallery to actually see your installation. And then again, the passive task 3 is a limited interaction using a passive touch display, like I mentioned. So those are the basic user tasks and the task flows that I explored. Let's take a little bit of a deeper look at those task flows and the design process that kind of ensued surrounding each one of those 3 tasks, and how I explored how the user is going to interact not only with the scenography or what's going on in the gallery space, but also how they're going to interact with the user interface itself, which is a really key, important part. So within those task flows, Again, task 1 is a more comprehensive task flow. Looking at a viewer experience, I explored low-definition wireframe versions of each task, then made those into high-definition tasks, as you see here. Each one of the tasks 1, 2, and 3 are represented here. The last one is that passive touch display that I mentioned that would just be visible in the gallery experience by itself. And kind of digging deeper than that, the first persona that I looked at, or the first target audience individual that I looked at, is an individual by the name of, a pretend individual by the name of Sissy. She's a fashion merchandiser who wants to be immersed in a color experience and be inspired by relevant colors based on a project that she's currently working on. And I targeted in on her with task number 1, as you see here. And it really focuses in on the sharing function of Chromatically, where she's able to go and experience the color installation or color curation that she curates herself, and then share that with somebody back at the office via a text message. And then persona number 2, his name is Thomas. He's a bit different than our millennial Sissy. He is a retired architect and volunteer at the Museum of Contemporary Art. He's a docent as well. He's inspired by the creative process, but he's a little bit uncomfortable with technology. So we kind of simplified the process with him and helped him kind of figure out how to use the reminder function of Chromatically, and that is that's represented here in this slide, where we're looking at task 2, moving in on the reminder function of Chromatically in the art installation itself, or on the user interface itself, which allows the user to get a reminder to their physical device a couple of minutes before the art installation that they choose is going to be populating. And the final one, last but not least, is the passive gallery visitor. His name is Truman. He's a teenager. He's a high school student, a museum goer inspired by digital art, and he doesn't have a mobile device, so he hates his parents for it. He's forced to use the capacitive touch display that would actually be in the art installation itself, allowing the user to actually see what the current curation is and what the upcoming curations are in the art installation, just by simply touching the icon and then seeing the upcoming and current curations by just scrolling through those on the capacitive touch display. I also took a look at a lot of designers within the professional industry, and they're all responding pretty positively to this tool. Of those polled, the design industry professionals responded quite positively to the idea of Chromatically. They were saying that it removes objectivity from color trends. It adds to already existing design tools like the Pantone matching system, and it helps clients see the relevance of a designer's color strategy. Let's also next take a look real quickly at the scenography, which is kind of the whole, it encapsulates the whole idea of envisioning and creating kind of the experience, whether it's in the gallery, whether it's the user interface, whether it's the components that you look at, and the didactics that are in the lower gallery space, which we'll get to here in just a moment. It's pretty paramount to the success of Chromatically as it exists. These two, the gallery experience and the user interface experience come together to kind of create this cohesive meaning to color inspiration. I started with sketches, and then I explored the user interface with wireframes, low definition wireframes, and then I tested those with a total of 7 respondents, and gained significant insight from those tests with the low def user interface designs, and then applied those to the changes. And then I worked out an ideal gallery space, which turned out to be a circular-shaped upper gallery space and a lower gallery space for didactics and museum kind of additional information that would allow the user to understand what the artist's intent is and create awareness. And I started with sketches as well, and then I did 3D renderings of those, and then I eventually 3D printed those, which are what you see up here. I also worked on the layout of the lower gallery space as far as the dimensions, the colors of the paints that were chosen, just to prepare the viewer's eye to be better aware of what's going on in the upper gallery where it's going to be dark, and so on and so forth. Most of that centered around these warmer greens, which biologically prepares the eyes for a darker space and also interacting with the colors. And then I ended up printing those in a 3D scale model, which you also see represented here, but also in the photographs in the presentation. This is the lower gallery where the didactics are, and then the upper gallery where the curations would actually take place. So let's take a look at how Chromatically works. It has a number of components that come together. From the back end, Chromatically has a color database that I compiled. The top 4,300 websites, global websites, ranked by Amazon and Alexa, were compiled. The screen captures of all 4,300 of those websites, which were purged out of the top 1 million, were then captured. So I captured 4,300 total websites. I automated that with a process using Python and a Selenium overlay and library. And then the top 36 colors from each and every website of those 4,300 websites that I screen captured were parsed by a software as a service called Cloudinary. And then I pulled those colors out and saved those into my database. And those are kind of symbolically represented here by parsing those colors out. And then once those were parsed, they were saved into that color database. And so actually, how does Chromatically work? To access the database, the user interface, or the individual that's curating it would use the user interface to select a combination of two leading categories. Country basically breaks down into language, and then industry. That would be the first step. And then that request would then be pushed to my database, which is using the technology called MongoDB. And then that information, once the color curation request is made, is then pushed to the particle cloud. And then once that information is there, then it's wirelessly pushed to any device that's connected with the Cloudinary code on the microprocessor, like you see on these two objects. These are independent of each other. They are populating the colors once they're curated independently from one another, and those could be deployed in any number of objects. So let's take a look at Chromatically by the numbers. Each of 12 leading countries were chosen based on general language taxonomies. Likewise, 15 leading industry categories were chosen based upon general site business. So when I say general site business, I went in and figured out what is the core business of this industry or of this website, and then used that information to determine what the industry would be. Within each of these categories, and industry, or category plus industries, the top 25 sites for each was compiled for a total of 4,300 websites that I mentioned previously in the database. This amounts, but I also queued up 1 million total websites where this 4,300 top tier of websites was pulled from. This amounts to over 144,000 top colors stored within the preliminary Chromatically database. And then there are also about 180 different unique color curation possibilities in the initial prototype for Chromatically. So how did I go about building Chromatically, and what kind of components, materials, and stuff did I use to actually build the circuitry and the microprocessors and the connections to the Wi-Fi and so on and so forth, other than the user interface and the database components? All right, so I started with sketches, and then I built the modular components. I started out by using the art object as a prototype, an initial prototype to test things. And then once I got that done, I then started building the other modular components for the prototype. It is a scalable prototype that allows components to be added or subtracted depending on the size of the gallery space. It includes modular components like this light box that actually snaps on to the actual LEDs. There's a total of 64 on each one of these matrix panels that are manufactured specifically for emitting light. There's a total of 10 of those in this prototype light installation. I estimate that there would be a total of over 1,500, 1,000 to 1,500 in the actual gallery space that I've scaled here. The LEDs would just fit on the back like this, and then those would attach to the diffuser and then the plexiglass panels that I had manufactured and cut that fit into this little case that holds them in place, and then they would be built around the cabinet and then lined together. I also designed, I call them bones, that actually affix each one of the modular components together and allow them to be flexed if they need to be, because it's using a flexible 3D printed material. In addition, I also designed the prototype case for this, the box, just to make it look a little bit cleaner. I had that manufactured. I did not build that myself, just because I wanted to make sure that it was clean. Once I perfected these modular components, I then constructed those into the box that you see here. All 10 LED block components were designed to be modular, like I said, so that they can be scalable. So how did I go about designing the Chromatically UI? I started with the responsive web application optimized for the phone. It also responds well to the tablet and the desktop. And I designed, as I mentioned before, a branded desktop object that allows designers to use it at home or at the office. It would populate curation straight to their desktop, like I mentioned previously. It could also be programmed to stream just the top curations or whatever the designer decides that they want to use for multiple branding applications. Now you can be inspired by colors as they are being used currently right now on the web, just by going to chromatic.ly. And we'll talk a little bit more about the components, and I'll answer any questions that you might have regarding the gallery space, the modular components, the desktop object, or the art installation. But feel free to go to your phone at chromatically.com, and that's it. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you for taking time out to let me share with you the exciting stuff that I've been working on and the things that I hope to be working on in the future to bring color inspiration to designers around the world. Thank you.